Deep in a cave in southern France, 36,000 years ago, someone painted a lion on the wall. Not a crude stick figure. A lion that seemed alive, muscles rippling, eyes focused. Then they stepped back. And for the first time in history, they looked at what they created and understood something profound. They weren't just another animal fighting to survive. They were different. They were human. But when did this happen? When did our ancestors stop being clever apes and start being us? When did they first look in the mirror of their own minds and realize, I exist? I think. I am? The answer will change everything you thought you knew about being human. Imagine you're living 70,000 years ago. You wake up, hunt, eat, sleep, repeat. You use tools. You communicate. You solve problems. But here's the question that haunts scientists. Were you aware of yourself? Did you know that you were you? This isn't a simple question. Self-awareness, the ability to recognize yourself as a separate being with your own thoughts and experiences, is what makes humans special. It's what separates us from almost every other creature on Earth. But tracing when this emerged is like trying to catch smoke with your bare hands. Scientists have been searching for clues, and those clues come from three main sources: burials, art, and symbolic behavior. These aren't just random activities. They're proof that our ancestors were thinking about big, abstract ideas. Ideas like death, identity, and meaning. Let's start with burials. When did humans first start burying their dead? The oldest confirmed burial belongs to Homo sapiens and happened around 100,000 years ago in Kafse Cave in Israel. Archaeologists found the remains of up to 15 individuals. But here's what makes it special. A juvenile was buried with deer antlers placed across their chest. This wasn't an accident. Someone carefully arranged those antlers. Why? Because they believed something. Maybe they believed in an afterlife. Maybe they wanted to honor the dead. Either way, it shows abstract thinking about death. More recently, in 2013, scientists discovered the oldest deliberate burial in Africa. Near the coast of Kenya, they found the remains of a small child, only 2.5 or 3 years old. The child had been placed carefully in a shallow grave in the fetal position roughly 78,000 years ago. Someone took the time to position this child gently, with care and intention. But here's where it gets controversial. In 2023, researchers claimed they found evidence that Homo naledi, a species with a brain 1/3 the size of modern humans, was burying their dead and carving symbols in caves between 241,000 and 335,000 years ago. If true, this would be the earliest burial by at least 100,000 years. And it would shatter our assumptions. We always thought big brains created complex behavior. But what if emotions and symbolic thinking came first, and big brains followed? Not all scientists are convinced. Some argue the bones could have been moved by water or natural processes. The debate continues. But one thing is clear. Burial is more than disposing of a body. It's a ritual. It shows attachment to the deceased. It shows understanding that death is significant. Now let's talk about art, because art is where self-awareness becomes undeniable. The most famous prehistoric cave paintings are at Lascaux in France. These paintings are between 17,000 and 22,000 years old. Horses, bison, mammoths, deer, hundreds of animals painted in stunning detail across the cave walls. But Lascaux isn't the oldest. In 1994, 3 explorers discovered Chauvet Cave in southern France. When they shined their flashlights across the walls, they saw something incredible. Lions, rhinos, bears, mammoths, over 1,000 paintings. And here's the shocking part. Radiocarbon dating showed these paintings were created 36,000 years ago. Some sections were painted 37,000 to 33,500 years ago. Scientists expected older art to be cruder, more primitive. But the Chauvet paintings were sophisticated. The artists used shading, perspective, and movement. One famous panel shows horses galloping across the rock. You can almost feel them running. These weren't mindless doodles. These were intentional creations by people who understood representation, storytelling, and beauty. But even Chauvet isn't the oldest. In Indonesia, on the island of Sulawesi, researchers found a hunting scene painted on a cave wall. It shows a pig and human-animal hybrid figures. Uranium series dating, which is extremely accurate, places this painting at least 51,200 years old. It's the oldest narrative art on Earth. And in January 2026, scientists announced an even older discovery. On Muna Island in Indonesia, they found a hand stencil at least 67,800 years old. Someone placed their hand on the wall and blew pigment around it, leaving their mark for eternity. Think about what this means. Tens of thousands of years ago, someone climbed deep into a dark cave, mixed pigments for minerals, and created images. Not for survival, not for food, for meaning, for expression, for identity. This is self-awareness in action. To create art, you must be able to think, I see this animal in my mind, and I can make others see it too. You must understand that your internal thoughts can be externalized. That's a huge cognitive leap. Cave art also shows something else. Symbolic thinking, the ability to let one thing represent another thing. A line of red ochre doesn't just mean red ochre. It can mean danger, life, blood, or spirituality. Symbols require abstract thought. And abstract thought requires self-awareness. The oldest symbolic artifacts are small but significant. Around 100,000 years ago in Africa, early humans created ochre engravings and beads. These beads weren't functional. They were decorative. They signaled identity, status, or group membership. When you wear a bead, you're saying, I am part of this group, or I have this role. That requires understanding yourself as a separate individual with an identity. At Manat Cave in Israel, researchers found evidence of collective rituals from the early Upper Paleolithic period. A large boulder was carved with complex geometric patterns and placed in the deepest, darkest part of the cave. Moving that boulder required multiple people working together. The carvings were intentional and symbolic. This wasn't random. This was a community gathering for shared meaning and ritual. Here's what all of this tells us. By 100,000 years ago, and possibly earlier, Homo sapiens were demonstrating clear signs of self-awareness. They buried their dead with care. They created art. They used symbols. They gathered for rituals. But self-awareness doesn't emerge all at once. It develops in stages. Modern research on children shows how self-awareness unfolds. Babies are born without any concept of themselves as separate beings. By 6 weeks old, they start showing a new kind of awareness. They spend more time awake and alert, observing the world. By 18 months, something remarkable happens. Children recognize themselves in a mirror. If you put a mark on a child's face and show them a mirror, they'll reach up to touch their own face, not the reflection. This is called the mirror self-recognition test. Scientists have used this test on animals too. Chimpanzees can pass it, so can some dolphins, elephants, and magpies. But most animals can't. This suggests self-awareness isn't unique to humans, but the depth and complexity of our self-awareness absolutely is. Human self-awareness goes beyond recognizing your reflection. It's understanding that you exist in other people's minds. You feel embarrassment, pride, and shame because you're aware of how others perceive you. This is called co-consciousness. Language deepened this awareness. By the time Homo sapiens were creating cave art, they had complex language. Language lets you talk about yourself. I did this. I want that. It makes the self concrete and shareable. But here's a wild idea. Psychologist Julian Jaynes proposed that modern consciousness only emerged around 3,000 years ago. He argued humans operated with a bicameral mind. One part gave commands, another heard them as voices of gods or ancestors. In this view, introspection is a recent cultural invention, not an ancient biological trait. Most scientists disagree. Evidence from burials, art, and symbols suggests self-aware, introspective humans existed at least 100,000 years ago, probably earlier. So when did humans first realize they were human? It depends on what you mean. Basic self-recognition? Even some animals have that. Symbolic thinking and awareness of death? At least 100,000 years ago, based on Kafze burials and symbolic artifacts. Full introspective consciousness, reflecting on your thoughts, wondering about your place in the universe? Probably between 100,000 and 50,000 years ago, during the Upper Paleolithic Revolution, which saw an explosion of art, symbols, and cultural diversity. By 36,000 years ago, when artists painted Chauvet Cave, Humans were definitely self-aware in every meaningful sense. They were planning, creating, symbolizing, passing down knowledge. They were us. But maybe the most profound realization isn't about a specific date, it's about the journey. Self-awareness emerged gradually through millions of years of evolution, through social interaction, language, art, ritual, and reflection. Every time an early human arranged a body in a grave, they acknowledged the individual's importance. Every time they painted on a cave wall, they externalized their internal world. Every time they wore a bead or carved a symbol, they were saying, I am someone, I exist. That's when humans realized they were human. Not in one instant, but in countless moments across thousands of generations. Moments of caring for the dead, creating beauty, sharing stories around a fire, looking up at the stars and wondering, what are we? We carry that legacy today. When you create, when you reflect on who you are, when you think about your life's meaning, you're continuing a tradition that started tens of thousands of years ago. You're part of an unbroken chain of self-aware beings. The next time you look in a mirror, remember this. Your ability to recognize that person, to know it's you, to wonder about your thoughts and feelings, is the result of an incredible evolutionary journey. A journey that took our ancestors from clever apes to conscious beings who could ask, who am I? And in asking that question, they became human.